Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another vintage cooking video. I'm so excited to be sharing today's video with you. I am going to be making some vintage inspired Thanksgiving dishes. So first we are going to be making some cocktail meatballs with the traditional grape jelly and chili sauce. Next, we're going to make a pumpkin cheese pie. And lastly, we are making a fall old fashioned that Adam helped me make. It's a cocktail recipe. So I'm super excited to be sharing these recipes with you today. You guys know that I have been enjoying my vintage cookbooks. So these are the two cookbooks that I'm going to be cooking out of today. This one is Betty Crocker's Hostess Cookbook, and this one is Betty Crocker's Cookbook. Both of these are from the late 60s, early 70s. So I did my best to tease my hair up, put my leather jacket on, and my hoop earrings. So I hope this is acceptable. Anyway, today's video is also a collaboration with Amanda from Mom's Messy Kitchen. She is also making a drink, an appetizer, and a dessert recipe. So make sure after you watch this video, go over and check her out. If you guys haven't seen her channel before, you will love her content. She posts a lot of things similar to what I do, and we have collaborated before. So let's get into the recipes, and I will have Amanda's channel linked down below as well. So the first thing that I'm going to get started on, since it needs to sit in the refrigerator for about 4 hours before we eat it, is the pumpkin cheese pie. So this is pretty much like a traditional recipe for pumpkin pie, except it has a sour cream topping, and it also has cream cheese in the pumpkin mixture, which is pretty unique and also delicious. It does not really taste like a cheesecake, but it does give the pumpkin pie a creamier flavor. So what I'm starting out with is some dry pie crust mix. The recipe called for Betty Crocker pie crust mix, but Walmart only had the Krusteaz brand, so I went ahead and went with that. But basically it's super simple. You just mix it with cold water, and then you can roll it out just like you would a regular pie crust. I will also have all of these recipes typed out in the description box below if you guys would like to print them or screenshot them. This pie was definitely delicious, and I would make it again for sure. So I'm going to make sure that I flour both my board and my rolling pin and the dough well to keep it from sticking. And you just want to make sure that you roll this out into a large enough circle that will fit the bottom of your pie pan. So I'm using like a larger deep dish pie pan. It's a Pyrex dish. I can link the one that I have down below. You don't need to grease this or anything. Just kind of fold it into quarters, transfer it over to the pan, unfold it, and then press it up against the sides. If you wanted to use a pre-packaged pie crust, you could totally do that in this recipe as well. So I'm just using my fingers to kind of push the dough up against the sides of the pie pan, and then I also used a paring knife to trim off the excess. So I'm setting that aside while I make the filling for this pie. So in my mixing bowl, I have 8 ounces of cream cheese that I've softened just a little bit in the microwave, 3/4 of a cup of sugar, and then I'm adding 1 15-ounce can of pumpkin. Make sure you get the pumpkin puree and not the pumpkin pie mix. You just want the pure pumpkin. I also added in 2 tablespoons of flour and a little bit of vanilla. So I'm just using my hand mixer. I think you'll definitely want to use either a hand mixer or a stand mixer to mix this up. Anytime you're beating cream cheese into a batter, it really helps to have some kind of an electric mixer. Otherwise, it gets really, really hard to try and get that all combined. So once everything is well combined, I can add the rest of my ingredients. So I am going to add 3 eggs to this, and then also some spices. So cinnamon, nutmeg, and ginger. I actually was out of ginger. I thought I had some in the cupboard and I didn't. I left it out and it was totally fine. It also calls for 1 teaspoon of grated lemon peel and 1 teaspoon of grated orange peel. So I'm just using my microplane grater to grate that over the bowl. I will link the one that I have down below. It's like $10 on Amazon, very inexpensive, and it does help a lot when you're trying to incorporate citrus zest into your recipes. So after that's done mixing, just give the bowl a final scrape with your spatula to make sure that everything is well combined, and then you can pour it into your pie crust. So you could definitely do like a decorative pie crust. I'm not the best at that. I would like to try at some point, but for now I just left it plain Jane. And then this will go into the oven at 350 degrees for 45 to 55 minutes. So here's what the pumpkin pie looks like when it comes out of the oven. You want to make sure that it is just set in the middle. Next, while that is cooling just a little bit, I'm going to work on the sour cream topping. So in a bowl, I'm going to blend 3/4 of a cup of sour cream, 1 tablespoon of sugar, and 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla, and then just mix that together until it is well combined. This is going to go on top of the pie while it's still warm, and then you'll put the whole thing in the refrigerator and let it set up. I was honestly a little bit skeptical about the sour cream topping. I wasn't sure how it would taste, but after you put the sugar in and it has time to refrigerate and harden, it almost tastes like like a sweet cream cheese mixture on the top. So definitely try that if you haven't before. I'm just going to carefully spread this over the pie. It is hot, so I'm just trying to make sure that I get everything, evenly spread over the top of the pie. And after that, I will get it in the refrigerator to chill for at least 4 hours. So here's what it looks like after it has time to refrigerate. This was so good. Definitely a different take on pumpkin pie. I did sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon over the top, and it was just delicious. Okay, so the next recipe that I'm going to show you is just a traditional cocktail meatballs recipe. So if you haven't had these before, they're basically meatballs in a grape jelly and chili sauce mixture. I have in my bowl here 1 pound of ground beef that I have thawed out, had that in the freezer. Next, I'm going to add some minced onion. So the recipe does call for about 1/3 of a cup of minced onion. I had a shallot hanging out in my fruit bowl that I needed to use up, and so I just went ahead and used that instead. When I'm making meatballs, I like to make sure that if I'm adding onion or garlic, that it is minced or chopped up super fine. I don't really like big chunks of veggies in my meatballs. Next, the recipe called for a tablespoon of chopped fresh parsley, so I'm going to add that as well. And then it does call for dry breadcrumbs, so I'll add some of those next. I also added some milk and some beaten egg into the meatball mixture, and then I'm going to go ahead and mix that up. You'll also add salt, pepper, and Worcestershire sauce. So once you get that mixture all combined, you'll basically just form it into little meatballs, and we'll fry those in a skillet before combining them with the sauce. If you were super short on time and you didn't want to do the homemade meatball part, you could totally buy frozen meatballs and cook them in the chili sauce with grape jelly. They're still good. I think that definitely the homemade meatballs are better, obviously, but I have used the frozen meatballs plenty of times. I did want to make sure I made this recipe, true to form though, as I was making it directly out of the Betty Crocker cookbook. So I'm just going to take the meat and roll them into about 1-inch balls. Mine were maybe a little bit larger than 1 inch, but it still made plenty. Definitely if you doubled this recipe and had 2 pounds of ground beef, you would definitely have enough for a party. So I'm just going to roll these up and place them on a plate, and then we will get them browned up. So in my slow cooker, I'm going to add 1 bottle of chili sauce and 10 ounces of plain grape jelly. If you don't have chili sauce on hand, you could substitute barbecue sauce. I've done that a lot and it turns out great. This is actually how I remember my grandma making cocktail meatballs and little smokies when I was a kid. And as I was making this, Adam's like, do you put grape jelly in these all the time? And I'm like, yeah, I always mix grape jelly in them. And he's like, huh, I didn't know that. But definitely try this if you haven't before. So now I'm going to brown the meatballs. Connor is going to help me place these in the skillet here. He felt very important to get to help me do that. But I have a 1/4 cup of shortening melted in my skillet, which was what the recipe said. And we're going to carefully place the meatballs in there and just brown them on all sides. It's not super important that you cook them all the way through in this step, especially if you're going to slow cook them. The original recipe calls to put the chili sauce and the grape jelly into the skillet and cook them up that way. But if you're going to be serving these at Thanksgiving or a party, I would definitely recommend using the slow cooker. So once those are all browned on one side, you just want to go ahead and gently turn them over. These meatballs don't have a ton of breadcrumbs in them, and so they are, just a little bit delicate. You want to make sure that as you're handling them and turning them over, that you're not being too rough with them or they will fall apart. So I have my grape jelly and my chili sauce mixed together in the bottom of the slow cooker. I have that set on high for now just to heat up, but once it comes to a bubble, I'm going to turn it down to low. And then once the meatballs have had time to simmer in the sauce a little bit, I'll turn it down to keep warm. So gently stir those around. Just make sure that the sauce is covering all of the meatballs, but again, make sure you're gentle while you're stirring it or they will break apart. So here's what they look like after they've been slow cooking for about 2 hours. You can see that the sauce was nice and bubbly. I removed some of them to a platter and put some toothpicks in them so we could try them out. Everyone loved these. Adam and I obviously love them. We've had them before, and the kids even ate some too. I garnished them with some chopped parsley, and that was our appetizer. All right, so the last recipe I'm going to show you is a drink recipe, a cocktail recipe, and Adam is helping me. He actually came up with this. So when I was looking online for like vintage cocktails or like late 60s, early 70s cocktails, it kept coming up with an old fashioned. And so we thought we'd do like a fall flavored old fashioned. So we're going to use apple cider and what is this, Tennessee Fire?
It's cinnamon whiskey.
Yeah, cinnamon whiskey. So it's kind of like Fireball, right?
Kind of, yeah.
All right, so we got 2 glasses here, and in the bottom you have an orange wedge, a sugar cube, and a, what they call a Toshi cherry.
Toshi black cherry.
Yeah, so I get these on Amazon, and they come in like a huge can. I'll link them down below, and they're really good in cocktails. So you're just gonna muddle all that stuff together. Oh, and you put how many? 3 dashes of bitters.
3 dashes of bitters.
Yeah.
Sugar cube, Toshi black cherry, and a slice of orange.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna muddle that, and then you're gonna shake together the cider and the whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, this is good. We had it the other night. I don't really like regular old fashions. I mean, I can drink them, but it's not my favorite. So I'll type all this recipe out in the description box too, but for each cocktail you need 2/3 of a cup of cider and 2 ounces of whiskey. All right, so here's the finished product. It's super simple. We just shook up the apple cider with the cinnamon whiskey, poured it over, and then Adam put an orange peel and a cinnamon stick. It tastes like fall in a glass. I'm gonna take one for the team and taste this. It's really good. You should make this ASAP. For sure. It's delicious. I don't even care if it's that vintage. It is now. Okay, so thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed these recipes, and I hope that you try some of them for your own Thanksgiving table. The pumpkin pie was really delicious. So were the meatballs. So was the cocktail. I have no complaints. Let me know if you're planning on trying out any of these out, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.